Welcome everybody, and what a special, fascinating video we have for you today. I want to ask you before we dive into this to keep your mind open. I'm asking for your open-mindedness as we explore a truly incredible and for many a brand new way to look at the solar system and the astronomy of our solar system. Those of us who love astronomy and combine it with our astrology are going to really enjoy this video. This new peak at a new astronomical system will have ramifications, amazing ramifications for astrology. Namely, first of all, that retrograde is not just an optical illusion from our earthly vantage point, but that retrograde motion actually does occur in the sky. This is a big, impactful concept, and it could be the reason why we feel retrogrades so powerfully when they occur. I have a whole 6 videos in this chapter going in depth with retrograde motion, both natally and by transit, in the Royal Stars Academy, my certified astrology course. Retrograde planets, I share in my Royal Stars Academy, have 2 effects that we mostly can correlate to both transiting retrograde planets and retrograde planets in our natal chart. Firstly, that we need to make changes in our lives or in society based on the nature of that planet and where it is retrograding. And 2, that we need to work on our own inner self with the nature of that planet before we can use that planet well in an outward fashion. They're the 2 main concepts behind retrograde energy in astrology. But there is just so much more to explore about retrograde. As I said, I've got a whole 6 videos about this, over an hour long, each looking at what it means for various signs, various planets, and various placements in astrology. So if you would like to learn more, please do join me at the Royal Stars Academy. Come and get certified as an astrologer or study for your own enjoyment. There is so much information in that course, it will blow your socks off. But the other item of importance is the role of Mars as we undertake this look at a different look at the astronomy of our solar system. And the importance of Mars shifts with this new geoheliocentric look. And this little small rock, because of this, could actually be the most important planetary body in the solar system. And you're soon going to see why. It is fascinating. And it's also interesting to me that we tend to overlook Mars so much in astronomy. We prefer to focus on big planets, prosperous planets like Jupiter or Venus or the Moon. And I think that this is somehow reflected in our society as well. You know, as above, so below. And as astrologers, we're focusing on all the benefics or planets that will bring us blessing. And we tend to shove to the side the concept of the war god and all the perceived malefic influences that Mars represents. But let me explain a little bit. In ancient times, there were 2 different war gods. In Greece, you had Aries. Now, this is nothing against Aries as the sign, but let me talk about Aries as the war god from ancient Greece. He was wild. He was violent for the sake of simply being bloodthirsty and vicious, and he was not well respected in ancient Greece. Mars, on the other hand, was the ancient Roman god, a hero, a superman, a warrior god fighting for a reason with valor and with purpose and with a mission. So today we can see 2 extremes playing out in our society. On the one hand, we do look around us and see an Aries extreme, war for no good reason, violence for no good reason happening in our world. And we also see another extreme. It's not the extreme of Mars in his power, rather it's our Mars energy being denied and shut down in society. We're told, or it's even not blatantly told to us, but implied to us that we shouldn't get angry. It's unspiritual to be angry, especially, when we see injustice and corruption and unfairness in society. Just send light and love. where it's a psyop that we've been told not to get angry at things that deserve anger. I don't see anybody telling Jesus to stop being angry when he was overturning the money collectors' tables in the temples. He let his anger, justified, righteous anger, be expressed. But we are told this in our society, and I believe that there's probably some energies behind that being sort of infiltrated into the spiritual movement to keep people from rising up when things are unjust and corrupt and wrong. It's very, very unfortunate. We are censored as well. You know, anyone taking a stand for their honest convictions is vilified or censored and shut down. And I had first-hand experience of this, along with hundreds of thousands of Australians who protested in the early 2020s against lockdowns and various other things associated with that time period and what was happening in the Western world in that time frame. I attended protest rallies along with many of my fellow Australian citizens, and these rallies were the largest rallies Australia had ever seen, the largest protests Australia had ever seen. But you will not find that anywhere in the history books, on the information channels. You won't find videos of this. It's all been censored, it's all been shut down and denied, because the powers that be, let's say, do not want people taking a stand, as I've just said, for their honest convictions and embracing that Mars energy. You know, Mars, before we discovered Uranus, Mars was the rebel for a righteous cause, the rebel with the cause. And then along came Uranus and has taken that role. But originally that was Mars' role, and it's still there in our Mars energy. I would suggest, my friends, these are the two extremes that we see in our society, and we need to get back to our inner warrior, our warrior god or goddess once again. We need to embrace that again. Embrace our inner rebel with a just cause. Embrace our own superhero. Now, as above, so below. We're talking in this video, and I can't wait to jump into it with you. Thank you for listening to this introduction. But we're talking in this video about a new look at astronomy, and particularly in the role of Mars. As above, so below. Maybe this different system is going to give us a new understanding of Mars, and if it is indeed correct, as we awaken to this truth, humanity might begin to awaken to their true superhero, their true righteous warrior energy once more. That's my prayer. So enjoy this look at retrograde motion and the different perspective on retrograde motion it's going to give, as well as this different perspective on Mars, the warrior planet. I hope you enjoy this video. I'm so excited by it. Thank you one and all. Let's find out more. Well, hello everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this fabulous session where we're going to be looking at the astronomy of a number of different things. Retrograde is one of them, and the models of the solar system, and looking at various components of that. And here to join us to do that today, we have Simon Shack. Hello, Simon. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Kesenya.
We have Patrick Holmquist. Thank you, Patrick, for joining us. And of course, David Warner Matheson, my husband, here with me in the room. So
great to be here.
Yes. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We're going to have such a great time exploring astronomy together. Now, having just said that, I mean, I want to dive right into things here. Patrick and Simon, do you want to perhaps share a little about the work you've been doing and perhaps the discovery that you guys have made, which goes against like the conventional grain of how we view the astronomy of our solar system? Whoever would like to take the stage
Patrick,
first.
you want to start off, Patrick?
Yes, sure. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, if you put things into perspective, because I think the hardest thing for people when we talk about this issue, the hardest thing or the hardest question to ask is that, is it the sun that orbits the Earth, or is it the vice versa? You know,
it's an age-old question, isn't it? From medieval times when we were told that we were, the planets were all orbiting around the Earth, and now general consensus is that we orbit around the sun.
Yes,
but do carry on.
Yeah, exactly, and so the thing is, I mean, you say it's a controversial question. Well, actually, for thousands of years, astrology or astronomy and astrology and science saw it as Earth, that the sun orbits the Earth. Then there is were other questions, you know, back in the 17th century, whether Earth is the immovable center of the universe. But that is not something that we argue. But what we argue, or what Simon has argues, and what they also argued in the 17th century, where there was a reformation and within science with Tycho Brahe and some as an astronomer, is that yes, Earth is at the center of the solar system, and the sun is actually orbiting the Earth, just as we have believed for thousands of years. But the thing is that back in the day, they had, you know, the Ptolemaic system or the Aristotelian system, and that had, you know, Earth in the middle, and then Mercury, Venus, the Sun, Mars, etc., in nice orbits around the Earth. But this was challenged in the 16th century by an astronomer by the name of Tycho Brahe. And he said, well, it's correct that Earth is at the center and that the sun is orbiting the Earth. However, the other planets, they are orbiting the sun. And this looks a little bit complicated when you draw it on, when you make a picture of it. But actually, I think it's a very compelling solution, because as we will speak about further on, I think it solves a lot of problems. You know, retrogrades has always been a problem when you make a solar system model. But when you configure the system in this way, the tychonic configuration, you don't have this problem, because the retrogrades becomes a natural consequence of this when the sun is moving around the Earth while the other planets are orbiting the sun. We're going to see that
shortly.
We're going to see that shortly. Yeah,
with us. But I'm interested, Patrick. How was Tycho Brahe's perspective received at the time? Was it welcomed or was it thrown out?
Well, in the beginning, go ahead, Simon. If
no, well, I just wanted exactly what I was going to, you know, just to make sure to tell our listeners is that Tycho Brahe's model was actually accepted for 100 years.
Wow.
After his death. He died in 1601, and his trusty assistant, Longomontanus, his name was Sørensen in Danish, but in Latin his name is Longomontanus. He put together what they call Tycho Brahe's Testament. It was a huge volume called Astronomia Danica, and that actually explained the whole of Tycho Brahe's work and his model, and that was accepted. Copernicus had not yet been, accepted by the scientific community in any way, because it had problems. Copernicus had problems at the time because it was such a novel idea to think that the sun would be in the middle, and so the stars would have to be incredibly far away, and Tycho Brahe just didn't like that. He thought it was absurd. So he had this other system, which I might share my screen later to show, which I just want to make sure that what the Tychos is, I call it my version of Tycho Brahe's model is nothing else but an evolution. I just have found one missing piece of the puzzle, if you could say, which is, as we will see, that the Earth is not completely mobile, but it does have an orbit, which is in all logic, because we know that every single body in the sky, stars and planets, they all have an orbit of their own. Most people don't even know that all stars have orbits. They are not immobile, and there's no star that's immobile.
Yes,
And
we've seen that just recently with the conjunction of two planets with Algol, which is a triple star, which is orbiting
yes.
In the trio. So yeah,
yes, Algol, yeah. And what we have discovered, it's important to say, most people just haven't heard that. It's strange that, I mean, I didn't know it a few years ago, that we have discovered, astronomers have discovered, that practically all the stars are double stars. They have a companion, which means if you see any point of light that you call a star in the sky, you can be pretty sure, absolutely, nearly 95% sure that it has a companion, but you don't see it with your naked eye. No companion can be seen with your naked eye. There are some stars like this closest star, Alpha Centauri, it's Alpha Centauri A and Alpha Centauri B, and they're big enough to be seen. With an amateur telescope, you can tell that they are two, but with your naked eye, they look like one. So this is very important to understand. We're talking here about nothing strange. What I'm saying is that if every star has a companion, then our sun must have a companion too, just by statistical probability. So what I'm saying, and what I've been demonstrating in this book, which came out in December last year.
Oh, great. What's the title of the book?
It's called the Tyos, our geoaxial binary system.
Fantastic.
I call it geoaxial, but
where can people get a copy?
Oh, at the website which Patrick and I have put up.
I'll put a link in the description.
And it's called,
to this
it's
video.
very simple. It's called tyos.space. That's the name of the website. And on that website, you can even read the book. It's available. I put it up for free now. And so you can read the book without, you don't need to purchase the book, but the hardcover is nice and very well printed. So I can recommend to check it out. So
yeah, and hopefully a collector's item, I would argue, because I mean, regardless,
hands on one quick, everybody.
Yeah, and just to rewind, Kesenya, I didn't answer your question very good. But I mean, what happened? How I got involved with working with Simon and the Tychos model was that he introduced me to the draft of his book in 2017, and there was this very controversial question, you know, is the sun, the Earth orbiting the sun, or vice versa? I mean, we are so you know, heliocentric today, and of course so was I. It felt very strange, but I read his work and I couldn't refute it. So what I decided to do was to help him out in order to know more about this model. And since I'm a computer programmer, it felt very natural to do help him out, do a simulation of the system. And as it turns out, it works perfectly.
So what you're proposing is not a heliocentric, not a geocentric, but a geoheliocentric model of the solar system.
Yes.
Amazing. Yeah. Would you like to show us how it actually works?
Sure. I can try and share my screen, maybe.
Sorry, Patrick, had you finished sharing your point? I interrupted.
No, I'm finished. But while Simon is getting his thing up here, yeah. So and I mean, just to this is not a new idea. As Simon pointed out, the geoheliocentric model, Tycho Brahe's model, was the accepted model during most of the 17th and 18th century. Yeah, but what Simon has done, and that I call the biggest astronomical discovery in 400 years, because it solves, because I mean the heliocentric model has problems, but the tychonic model has problems as well. But Simon's discovery solves all those problems, and
Can
this
I
makes
ask?
yeah.
Sorry, I'm
Mhm.
very good at interrupting, and I do apologize for that. But can I ask, were these problems to do with the calculations of Mars? Because I know that Kepler, who was a
Yes.
student of Tycho Brahe,
Yes,
could
exactly.
not
Mars.
make it work because Mars is a difficult case.
Mars was the problem. Mars was the number one problem. Can you see my screen now? Or
Yes.
yes. All right. So the Tycho's model and its harmonious configuration. I just want to show it and quickly explain what we're looking at here. This is practically how Tycho Brahe concluded that the Sun and Mars move in the skies. So you can see the Sun is, of course, the yellow dots here. Mars is a red one, and their orbits intersect. So at the time, they were his peers, his colleagues were laughing at him because they thought they will collide at one stage, here or here. You know, there was the controversy at the beginning of when Tycho Brahe presented this model. But that's not the case. I mean, no binary stars ever crash into each other. They of course they don't, simply because they are locked in a way that they will never do so. So, and Tycho Brahe had this Earth here in the middle of this dance of Sun and Mars, but he had the Earth immobile. So this blue orbit you see here, which I've called the PVP orbits, it's what we will be doing in 25,000 years. The Earth moves slowly at 1 mile per hour around these orbits. Why does it do that? Because we will find out one day exactly why, but for now I will say that just say that this solves all the problems of so many problems.
Are you saying it's a 5,000-year orbit of the Earth around Mars? Is that what?
No, so Mars happens to
right.
be
This this is the first thing that people will say. No, you see, Mars is here now. It's in opposition in this case, on this drawing, but it's not Earth going around Mars. Mars always passes in the middle of these PVP orbits, but it's the Earth will never orbit around Mars. The whole system will actually revolve. So Mars is just passing here all the time. You will understand that when we show you the Tychosium, the simulator that Patrick has devised, which is really beautiful also to watch. Amazing. Because it can trace the paths of all the planets, and so they draw flowers and beautiful things, spirographs. So what do we see here? The Sun and its two moons, Venus and Mercury. Well, Venus and Mercury are actually the Sun's moons. They are tightly locked. Whatever astronomers will tell you, they will tell you, no, Mercury was discovered that, it was discovered in the 60s that it was not tightly locked, but it's controversial. I would say it is tightly locked to the Sun. And so is Venus. And they are very particular because, first of all, they don't have moons. They are the only two planets that don't have moons, Venus and Mercury. And that's even for astronomers, even NASA says this is a mystery for scientists to solve, why they don't have moons. They don't have really any serious explanation for why they don't have moons. But then, I've been looking closely at, calculating what is their rotation speed, the rotation around their axis, and the rotation of Venus and Mercury is extremely slow. It's like a walking pace. So Mercury rotates at about 5.4 kilometers an hour. I mean, this is the speed of the equator. You know, if you stand on the equator, you will go at 5.4 kilometers an hour, and Venus at 2.7, even slower, half the speed. And this is very, these are very slow speeds, completely different from, for instance, Jupiter or Saturn. They rotate at 47,000 kilometers an hour or 35,000 kilometers an hour. They rotate much faster. So this is a particular feature of moons, evidently, because our moon, it rotates at 16 kilometers an hour, 16.5, which is, you know, and you can see there's a relationship, a resonance, speed resonance between Mercury, Venus, and our moon, which is 136. It's a fantastic. It's like, and also it reminds us of the three most important moons of Jupiter. They have a 1, 2, 4 resonance. So here we have 3 moons in our system, which all rotate extremely slowly on their axis, and they're all tidally locked. And how many people knew that? Well, I guess even you astrologers will know that Mars has 2 moons, Phobos and Deimos, which mean fear and terror. That's the meaning of these names.
Poor old Mars.
So you can see
with fear and terror.
Or Mars. So it really looks kind of harmonious. That's why I write harmonious here, because we have the moon. No, sorry. The sun with 2 moons, and the Mars on the other side with 2 smaller moons. Of course, Mars is much smaller, and that's the first thing that people will, you know, the first reaction you will get when you show this model to someone. They will say, "Oh no, Mars cannot possibly be the companion of the sun. It's too small." Well, what I did discover in the beginning of my research, like 10 years ago, I just went and looked at the brightest star in our sky, which you know,
Sirius.
Kesenya, Sirius,
yeah.
right? And I just looked at the size of Sirius A and its companion Sirius B, and they just happen to be proportionally identical to the Sun and Mars, which means to say the Sun is 205 times bigger than Mars, and Sirius A is 205 times bigger than its small Sirius B companion. They are proportionally identical. And this is, you know, it's curious. At least you would admit it's a curious fact.
Yeah.
But there's more. There's more that I've been finding over the years. They even have very similar behaviors, orbital behaviors. They look like the same. That our system looks like a photocopy of Sirius, and we will get there later.
And Simon, could I just jump in? I love that you've said harmonious, and pointing out these resonances between the tidally locked orbit of Mercury, tidally locked orbit of Venus, and we're most familiar with the tidal lock of our moon, which is always showing its same face to us. That's what it means, tidally locked. As it goes around, it turns, but it turns at just the right speed to always, like a gear. So already this harmonious relationship is suggesting what I find so intriguing, so much that's intriguing about all this, but on a channel that's talking about astrology, we're starting to see harmonies between the bodies that are moving as if they are connected, as if they are influencing one another. And this speaks to, you know, if you say, well, a retrograde might impact us on Earth, the common, you know, scientific Neil deGrasse Tyson, NPR, you know, science
They don't think it's
channel
possible,
will say
they?
that's ridiculous. You know, we've left all that behind. But if all these bodies are harmonious and moving in these harmonious ways,
They're influencing one another.
There clearly is connections, and these 205 resonances between Sirius and A and B and our Mars and the Sun. It speaks to something going on that I find fascinating.
Yes, absolutely. And there's more about harmony in our system. We'll see about that later also. It's the fact that the moon seems to be a very central object and very important. I call it the central drive shaft of our system. And I'll show you why. Because well, we'll get there later.
Yes, may I interrupt here, Simon? Because, you know, I know the title Kesenya here is the retrogrades. And I would like to demonstrate the retrogrades. Because, you know, when the sun, and it's actually not hard to understand, if I may share my screen here. If it's like they say, you know, a picture says more than
really
1,000 words sometimes.
1,000 words.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm sharing my screen here, and let me bring up the Tychosium.
And
this is
that's great.
Yeah, you see it?
Yes.
So and this is the new version of the Tychosium I'm working on, and it will soon be released. So if someone goes to tychos.space and don't see exactly this UI, that is why. But this will be released eventually. But let me show you here. Here we have the system that Simon's Tychos model, and here we have Earth, and here we have the Sun, and here we have Mercury, Venus, and Mars. Okay.
Fabulous.
So as this model says, is that the Sun is moving around the Earth, while the other planets is moving around the Sun. And this will this solves this peculiar retrograde motion that we have with the planets so elegantly. Let me show you here.
Because
so if
in retrograde in astrology, we work on the premise that it's just an illusion in the sky, that it's not, planets aren't really going backwards in the sky, that it's an illusionary thing. But your model shows that the planets are indeed going backwards in the sky. Please demonstrate.
Relative to us, but they they seem to do, but they are actually just moving around the Sun. So let me start a simulation here, and we'll see. So now you see this, the system is moving. It's 1 second equals 1 week. So, and if you see here, the traces here are the retrogrades. So the planets are traced, and the circles are the orbits around the Sun. And what you see here is that while Mercury, Venus, and Mars are merrily orbiting the Sun, from our perspective, they will do retrogrades. Sometimes they move backwards. And
they actually trace that retrograde in space, though, don't they? I mean, they really are making that loop.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's the big difference.
Yeah.
Maybe you should take
go ahead.
No, just switch off, maybe just leave Venus on, Patrick, so it doesn't get so complicated for someone who sees this for the first time. So just leave Venus on and let Venus go a bit faster and show first, without the trace, that we need to see that Venus is only ever going around in circles, but it comes this way. It does go backwards, as you see that loop here. This is close to Earth, because it's just geometry. It is a natural effect of a body revolving around another revolving body. That is, Venus is revolving around the Sun, which is revolving around the Earth, and that will make this retrograde. Naturally, it is nothing magical. It is simply, of course, we have to then understand that they are probably magnetically connected, like magnets. Maybe that's the easiest way to imagine it. I sometimes use the analogy with a yo-yo. You know, if you have a yo-yo string and you go around, and if you were on a rotating platform that goes around, you'd see that yo-yo string doing the same thing. Or a lasso, cowboy, which is running forward with his he's running in circles with his horse. So the horse is doing a circle, but his lasso, which he's, throwing around, will also do such retrogrades. It's nature for you.
Yeah.
Nothing strange at all.
So this is the sun's the cowboy, and Venus and Mercury are the two lassos he's got going at once.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe you can go a bit faster now, Patrick, and show what a beautiful five.
Yes, eventually we will see here.
Five petals of Venus.
Yeah, eventually here we will see the flower of Venus that all astrologers are very familiar with, because it's so if I just move the perspective here, so I'm looking down to Earth from you will see this. You see this flower here.
It is beautiful.
Flower shape of Venus.
And what I find so noteworthy is those retrogrades that are caused by that motion you just described. That planet is coming straight towards the Earth during that retrograde, and it is always retrograding when it's closest, as you say.
In astrology, that's how it works. The planet is always closest to the Earth when it's retrograding, and this is exactly an example of why.
And so can the heliocentric model explain why the retrogrades always happen when they are closest to the Earth, or is that something that
what they explain, what they tried to, what I've always heard, and I accepted it for many years, that it's an effect, they say, of us, in the case of Mars, for instance, when Mars goes retrograde, they say that's because we are in the inside lane, and when we overtake Mars, which goes slower, we will see this effect against the background of the stars. And it seemed quite plausible to me for many years, but looking very closely at this idea, it is actually not possible. Why? Because we now know perfectly how long these retrogrades are, because they are different in length. They change. Some are shorter and some are longer. And if that effect should be the reason, it would have to be the other way around. Let me explain. Because when Mars comes closest to Earth, it can come as close as 56 million kilometers, then its retrograde is shortest, but it should be longest when it's closest. When Mars is closest to us, the retrograde should be longest, but it's the shortest. Well, okay, yeah, right. Thank you, Patrick. Show them with your mouse the shortest retrograde.
Yes.
Yeah. So I switched the trace now. Yeah, I've switched the trace now from. Can you hear me?
Yes, Patrick. Thank you.
Yeah, my mic is on.
Yes.
So I switched the trace now from Venus to Mars. So now we're seeing the trace of Mars, and what you can see here, and that's what Simon is explaining, is that here we have a very small retrograde, a very small loop. But this occurs when Mars is closer to the Earth. And here we have a big loop, a very dramatic retrograde. And that occurs when Mars is further away from the Earth. And that actually makes the heliocentric explanation for retrogrades geometrically impossible, because of parallax when something is closer and moving, because they're saying it's an effect of parallax.
Optically impossible, I would say, Patrick. Less more than geometrically, optically, because it's a question of distance.
Yeah, we can mean words. Yeah,
it's a parallax effect, which should be the other way around, simply. So okay, now you just passed the one of the. Can you put Patrick, please? Can you put the date? Just go to a certain date. 2003, yes. 2003, 0828. So that's August 28, 2003.
While we're getting this up on the screen, may I ask something? You say Tycho Brahe's model was in favor for 100 years. What caused it to fall out of favor?
That's a very good question, and something that I still haven't wrapped my head around. I've never been able to see when actually did it fade away from from the graces of the scientific
Yes.
world, you know, because it was so good. But it had a problem, and one of the biggest problems is that since he said that Earth was immobile, he couldn't explain the precession of the equinoxes.
Oh,
And
we'll talk
that
about that in
that
a
was a
minute.
big problem. But that is what my PVP orbit explains very simply. The blue, you see our blue orbit of Earth, that is the precession, because we are moving slowly clockwise, as seen from, as we see it here. Earth is moving clockwise, so from left to right on your screen. And it takes 25,344 years to do one circle around the PVP orbit. It's called the PVP orbit because we are under Polaris now, which is our North Star, current North Star, Polaris. And in about half a circle, we'll be under Vega. All astronomers agree on that. It's been calculated that we will be under Vega in 12,000 years, which means we will be on the other side of this blue orbit here. And then we will return to the Polaris. So it's PVP. That's why I call it that way.
So you don't think that maybe we're in a trio system with Sirius or another star further out, that we just
we will get there. We'll get to Sirius. Yes.
One thing at a time.
No, I didn't include that in my first edition of the book because I hadn't looked at it enough. But in my second edition, I speculate, it's not one of the biggest points on my new book, but I speculate that we may very well, the star companion of the sun is Sirius. So we have different types of binaries here. We have, local binaries, which we will call our system. And another local binary would be Sirius A and Sirius B. But they both also revolve around each other in intersecting orbits. And that is nothing strange. We know many stars, two pairs of stars, two pairs to the left down there, and two other to the right. And we can see them over longer periods of time that they're approaching each other, and they will eventually go around each other. So there are many examples of double. They call them like that. They call it double systems. So we are maybe very possibly a double system with Sirius. And there are many clues to that. Well, there are several clues that actually make that plausible. But again, it's not one of the main points in my book, but it's interesting you asked me this question. So yes, I believe that Sirius is our double, and with more study, I think we'll actually find out that is the case.
Yeah, and it would explain why in ancient times it was such a revered star, and that they
it was a very revered star by Egyptians, by many cultures. It was very important. They use it as the start of the year because the heliacal rising of Sirius, when it came, was in July in Egypt. They use it for the start of the year, and it was extremely important for them because and people who have studied Sirius, like the Binary Research Institute and another man called Karl-Heinz Hollmann, they've actually looked at Sirius for a long time, and they cannot see Sirius precessing like the other stars. Yeah. Which means it does. So Sirius is the only star that doesn't precess, and that's a big point to validate the idea that it is our binary companion. I mean, this companion of the sun. Sirius A is a companion of the sun. Between each other, Sirius A and Sirius B are companions. The sun is a companion of Mars, but in the bigger spectrum, they both are companions. I think that's clear now. So
back to your date. Thank you for that sidetrack. I appreciate it.
So now we're in 2003.
I've moved the simulation now to August.
Yes. It was just to show you that this was a very, very close passage of Mars to Earth. They said it hasn't been as close as this in 60,000 years. Everybody was saying, and you can trace it and show it.
Yeah.
So you can see.
I will just do it a little bit slow here. So here comes
because
Mars.
I want to make, every time we do this podcast, I find people commenting later saying, "Oh well, don't these planets on your simulator come too close to Earth?" Well, you've got to understand that it's not, the sizes of the planets are not to scale, because you can't do that. It's just it's a graphic constriction. Some people say, "Oh, Venus is so close to the moon, that never happens." Well, it is just because of the limitations of. I mean, if we would have the planets to scale, we wouldn't be able to see them.
There'd be pinpricks. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be so small. So I just want to say that it's a elementary thing, but many people are baffled by that. What I need to say, that really what you need to understand when you're looking at is not a fanciful system that just works like this. It actually shows the exact positions of each planet, that the way they have been observed over hundreds of years. So I of course, we have been fine-tuning this simulator for a couple of years, and we have achieved a quite remarkable precision. I'm comparing it, of course, with other simulators, which are heliocentric, but in spite of the whole system looking so different, it works perfectly. Even the distances, like here, when Mars was here, we can see on the list here on the tables that it was, oh yeah, you can click on it. Oh, 0.37 AU, and that's where it was officially. And the exact position, 22, 32 on that. All those positions are, they check out. They check out.
I'll just point out for my viewers, this is all available online to play with and explore and look.
Yes.
The Tychosium, guys, is what it's called. It is incredible, and you can spend hours making beautiful geometric patterns following the path of all the planets.
And can I have you, Simon and Patrick, as we're talking about retrogrades, you mentioned one way that the Tychos model does a better job of explaining the evidence on retrogrades, that being the loops that are bigger should...
So there's 700 days between a one retrograde of Mars to another, but then sometimes we have an anomaly where there's only 500 days.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask them about, is what sorts of retrograde evidence causes problems for heliocentric, because I think viewers will be saying, wait, why are we even talking this? How can anyone even question this? The reason we can question this is the heliocentric model has problems explaining so many pieces of evidence, including retrograde evidence. So you've already mentioned one. What other retrograde evidence does your model explain well that the heliocentric model can't handle or has problems with?
Well, I kind of briefly mentioned it earlier, but the biggest problem is actually the different sizes of the retrogrades. So they're always different, and they should be, when they are smaller, they should be larger, and vice versa. I mean, they are upside down as of the heliocentric theory. They should not be shorter when Mars comes closer. They should be longer, because it's easy to verify. You put your finger in front of your nose and you look down at the library, and then you move your head from right to left. So if your finger is closer, you will see many books moving from right to left. But if you stretch your arm out, you will see many less books moving in relation to your finger. And that's all. It's perspective. It's perspective. It's simple perspective. It's something that anyone can test for themselves.
So what you're saying is, when the astronomers agree that Mars is farther away, and yet its retrograde is covering a larger space of the sky when it's farther away than when it's closer. But if we're just passing on an inside track, that shouldn't be. Am I saying that right?
It should be, the retrograde should be longer when Mars comes closest to Earth, because that's just like your finger. If you put your finger close to your nose, it would considerably wider. You see,
but it's not. Notice in the Tychosium here that when the Mars is on one side of the Earth and the Sun's on the other, that's when we get a retrograde. So
yes,
the Earth
is always in opposition. Mars always retrogrades when it's in opposition.
That's right.
So when the Sun is on one side and Mars is on the diametrically opposite side.
So that's a strong piece of evidence. But isn't there also the what Kesenya was mentioning, the actual synodic alignments of Mars with a
well, that's even strong. That's a huge problem for heliocentrism. You see, what Kesenya just hinted at, that Mars has a 707-day period. That's the normal period it takes for Mars to return facing the same star. Okay, is that clear?
Yes.
It's a period that if you go out in your garden and you decide to look at Mars, you will have to wait 707 days to see Mars return in front of a given star. You know, say that you have, you know, one special day you can see Mars just in front of a star, just close to one star. You will have to wait 707 days, and again 707, and for 7 times 707 days. But the 8th time, suddenly you will see Mars aligning in front of that star in only 546 days, 546 days. That's the long cycle of Mars, how it behaves in reality. That is undeniable. That is verifiable. They don't talk about it in astronomical circles. They don't talk about it because it's such a problem.
Yeah, I'm
let
thinking
me finish, Patrick. Let me finish, because
no, but what I would like to say is maybe you could show some of your wonderful graphics that illustrates it while you're talking. If you share your screen and show this problem.
Yes, like right now it is lined up with Algol, so it'll line up with Algol just like this, 707, 707.
That's right.
And that's a king size problem for the heliocentric. But these retrogrades.
Here we go.
Here we go. Okay, here we go. So let's see now. Yeah, this is the. I mean, here are the facts, right? This is a slide from my show. So I try to do them simple, you know, when I do presentations. So Mars returns facing a given star in this odd sequence of time intervals: 707, 707, 707, and finally 546.
So random, isn't it?
It's random. And who knew this? Well, the Maya astronomers knew this, and that is very hard to find, but you will find modern astronomy historians that talk about it. But they talk about it for long articles, but they don't even conclude that this is amazing. We should, hey, stop everyone. We should understand why this happens. They don't even reason about it. But I was lucky enough to find people who have been studying the Maya, you know, the Dresden Codex and stuff like that.
Yes.
So Kepler, what did Kepler do with these numbers? Because obviously he must have known this. He was looking at his master's observations. Tycho Brahe's observations were the most accurate ever made. Kepler instead completely ignored these empirically observable facts and instead averaged the sidereal period of Mars to 687 days. Well, Mars never returns facing the same star in 687 days. Never. So that's cheating. To me, that's cheating. Right? Because that's not true. That's just an average, which, you know, he wanted to make it work, you know, and Mars just didn't want to obey to his calculations, because he was completely betraying his master. He was trying to make it work in a Copernican way, in a heliocentric way.
For those who don't know, Kepler was a student of Tycho Brahe, who had this heliocentric model. right?
He wasn't. No, he wasn't a student.
Oh.
No, Kepler was no student. He was a mathematician. He was a young guy, 26 years old, something, when he got, well, 25, when he met Tycho Brahe. And Tycho Brahe was only baffled because he couldn't make up himself what Mars was doing, because he seen that Mars was behaving strangely. So Tycho Brahe was also baffled, and he asked Kepler. He gave Kepler only his Mars observations, because he was very jealous of his master work. He gave him only the Mars observation, and he said, "Look, can you try to figure this out? Why does Mars move so strangely?" And Kepler said, "Yeah, I'm gonna find out. I'm gonna figure out this in 8 days." Well, it took him 8 years, and he didn't even find the right solutions. 8 years later, he finally published what he had come up with about Mars, but it's wrong. It's wrong. He is using it all the time.
Just so for all the listeners, Kepler proposed a model of the Earth going around the sun, basically what we all learned in school. And so therefore, Kepler had to fudge or fraudulently change this, because his model that we all learned in school, that we all think nobody can possibly question, oh, that's the model. Anyone who talks otherwise is crazy. But actually, Kepler's model cannot handle this problem. It cannot explain this problem, but the retrogrades that you show actually explain it.
Yes, and here it's not about retrograde, actually. It's the cycle of Mars, which has this strange sequence. And now I will show you why. Okay, here's how a heliocentric simulator shows this sequence. You know, this sequence where I just show you, this one. Okay, we see it here happening. I've been, looking at this simulator they have. And here's every time we have Mars here in, let's say here in 2020, 05 or 4, and here is Mars, and here is I took a control star. I took one. You can take any star you like, but I took Dene Balgedi, which is a pretty famous star. So here it was here on this date Mars was facing Dene Balgedi, and then here, and then here, and then here, and so each of these arrows would point towards the same star. Well, how could that be? I mean, they're all parallel. And okay, but so astronomers will tell you, yeah, that's because the star is so far away, so there won't be any parallax that can be noticeable. All right, okay, let's even accept that. But you see here, at between 8 and 7 points, this is, these dates, this number 7 and number 8 are separated by only 546 days. And this means that we would be on the other side of our supposed orbit and still see Mars in front of the same star. It doesn't make sense optically. But if you want to buy the idea that the star is so far away that you won't see any parallax, that's up to you. But what you will have to accept is this, that this is much more logical. Here we have our Tychosium simulator showing us that Mars on these 8 dates, actually 9 dates or 8 dates, every time it returns on the same line of sight towards the star, including the very strange short one. You see here is Mars, 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 Mars. All these dates are on the same line of sight towards the star. And this is what the Tychosium shows you, and you can go and check and verify for yourself. So if if I always like to say this, if you prefer this explanation, I mean the heliocentric, then you would have to say this is just coincidence. Yeah, it works like this, very nice in the Tychosium, but it's just a matter of coincidence. Well, okay, so you would be a coincidence theorist in my mind. So you can imagine, Kesenya, that when Patrick was putting together Tychosium, painstakingly making it work, and I was fine-tuning the whole thing,
It's magnificent, by the way, Patrick. It's just absolutely magnificent.
It is a beautiful simulator. You know, when we were doing this in the beginning, in the first year or so, I was so nervous when I started checking this affair here.
Yeah.
You know, I knew about this strange sequence, this one. You know, so when I set off to test it, you know, I was shaking. You know, I said, okay, 707 days, 707, 707. I said, oh my God, I hope the 8th one will be 546, and it was 546. So there have been some incredible moments here, you know. I've been almost falling off my chair when some stuff like this happened. So here I bluntly say here, the Copernican model is geometrically impossible, because if we are aligning with a star here, we feel going around the sun as in the heliocentric model, we will be here on November 5, 2018, when Mars was in front of that star, and 546 days later, we would be, you know, that's 1 year and a half. You know, that's actually 1 year and a half. Yeah. This number is 1 year and a half. So one turn, no, from here. So 1 turn and a half, and we will be here, right? And
it's got to be consistent, or the heliocentric model just doesn't work.
And then we have this same star. We have moved sideways by 300 million kilometers, and Mars turns in front of the same star. Yeah. All right. Well, so there is no parallax in this system. Nothing happens even if we move by 300 million kilometers sideways. So
and Simon, just I'm anticipating a possible naysayer who might say, but wait a minute, in that image on the right, maybe Mars is way over to the left, and so the line would point. But this is off of
no. This is the way their simulator shows it.
Yeah.
Any heliocentric simulator shows Mars in that exact position, and it is 28 hours 47 minutes where Dana Balgetti is in the sky. It's always 21 hours 47 minutes. So in both cases, on both of these dates, Mars is said to be at that right ascension and declination.
So Mars is the real thorn in the side, isn't it, for many
Yes.
astronomers? And it's so interesting to me as an astrologer. I mean, and we all know astronomy and astrology used to be one and the same science, and there's, you know, thanks to the Catholic Church, and it's all been separated out now. But in astrology, Mars is often, to my mind, one of the most overlooked planets and ignored planets.
Yes. Really.
Astrologically, we focus on the Venus and the Jupiter and the Saturn and all that, and we never tend to think much about or focus on how important Mars is. But under this system, the heliocentric model, Mars is actually everything. You know, he is key, because without him, we have no binary system that's causing all this to happen. I love it. I love it. Sorry to interrupt again.
No, of course.
And I think it also is so fascinating, Kesenya, because I mean, this becomes so logical and harmonical with what we can observe in other star systems, because what we have discovered throughout the decades, when, you know, telescopes has become more advanced, and we can treat images using computer, etc. We have discovered that it seems like that all of our star systems around us are actually binary systems. They are not composed of one star, they are composed of two stars, and they are dancing around each other, binary systems. But the thing is that this hasn't been discovered until later times, is that the binary companion, the smaller star, is usually not that luminous. When you look in an ordinary telescope, you only see one star. But if you have an advanced telescope and can magnify, there is actually a companion. That is a binary star.
Yes.
And that is the thing we see here as well, you know, as below, so above.
Yes.
It seems like the solar system is a binary system, just like all the other systems we can see. and Mars is its binary companion. So Mars shouldn't actually be called a planet; it should be called a star, or as there is a very interesting theory that planets, another way, it's called stellar metamorphosis, that planets and stars are actually the same thing, just in different stages of development. So eventually a star burns out and slowly turns into a planet. And that
Is
could
that what
be
you
what
think Mars is, Patrick?
Yeah, I think so.
Well,
think,
yes,
Mars is a
Mars
dying
could,
star.
it's you could call it maybe a brown dwarf or a red dwarf. The red dwarfs are the absolutely most common stars in the skies. But do you know that not one single red dwarf is visible with your naked eye? Not one. They are all very, very dark. They don't shine with their own lights because they don't have this. I mean, officially, it's because they don't have this fusion like the sun has. But they are extremely dim, and they are reddish orange. Both red dwarfs and brown dwarfs are a dull red orange color. What color is Mars in the sky?
Red
It's
orange.
reddish orange. So people will say, "Why? Are you crazy? You think that the planet Mars is a star?" Well, yes, it could be a very, very old brown dwarf, which is extinct. It's old and it's not shining with its own light. It gets its light reflected by the sun, so we see it pretty well. But a much further away, similar object and like Mars would not be visible, only with extremely good telescopes, and mostly, well, most are not even visible with the best telescopes, only with in a red spectrum with spectrographs and stuff. So they really are extremely. There are so many stars that are practically invisible. You just remember this. This is a fact. So we shouldn't always think of stars like huge, burning fires. They must be visible. No, there are many stars. The majority, which are red dwarfs, they are invisible to the naked eye, first of all, and very difficult even with telescopes to see. So I just wanted to make this point because, yes, Mars could be a type of brown dwarf or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. But why should we? Does it really matter if we call it a planet or a star? I mean, Kepler always called Mars Stella Martis. Stella is star. For some reason, he always, and in all his writings, it's Stella.
Wow, that's telling.
Yes.
Yeah, and
and here is Kepler's drawing, Stella Martis. Here you go. De Motibus Stella Martis, of the motion of star Mars. And you know what this drawing is? It's one of the first drawings he did in his Astronomia Nova, his huge book. He tried this out first. This is a geocentric view of how Mars behaves according to his calculations. Well, look what we can do with the Tychosum. We can exactly copy this. This is from the Tychosum. This is, he did this from 1580 to 1596. Mars was here in 1580. Then it was here in 1596. So it is 16 years of Mars. Well, here we have 16 years of Mars in the Tychosum.
Wow.
We can paste these on top of each other.
Yeah,
Mars was onto something at that time.
Yeah.
He was onto, and he discarded this. He threw it in the dustbin. That's ironically.
I must tell you something here. This picture, this image from Kepler's book, actually was what gave me goosebumps when I started working with Simon in 2017. Because I'm a skeptic. I didn't think this was a fruitful theory that Simon had, and I thought, well, if we work on this with computer simulation, we will eventually figure out it doesn't work. But then he showed me this picture, and when I was doing the simulation, I saw the exact same thing in Tychosum, and then I really got it. He's onto something here. And what we have shown during this years is that yes, this model works, and I dare to say that, well, it's a fact. It's actually the only model that works in all
I
aspects,
It is.
in respect to observations. So,
I love how it explains why Mars is the rarest of retrogrades. All the other outer planets beyond Earth retrograde once a year for about 5 to 6 months. And Mars is beyond the Earth. How come it doesn't do the same kind of, once a year retrograde? And sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, they explain that because of the speeds of, they kind of make it kind of work in the heliocentric model. But again, this is just, they saying it's a parallax effect. Now parallax, they use parallax to explain something, but they can't explain the lack of parallax. So when they need to explain the retrogrades, they use the optical parallax effect to explain it. But then how can they explain when Mars aligns with that star, as we saw, on two completely different locations? So yeah, it's in total contradiction. The heliocentric model is geometrically impossible. And
may I show you, since we're talking retrogrades here, and I have a little demonstration lined up here in the classical or the existing tychosium that I would like to show. So if I share my screen here, I just would like to show, because it becomes very easy.
Oh, will it? Sorry. Sorry.
Can you see my window now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
So it becomes so easy to explain retrogrades in this model. And here we have the outer planets. This is the original, the current tychosium that everyone can try. So you can just go to www.tychos.space and go in and verify this yourself. So what you need to do is to check trace, and then if you check Jupiter and Saturn here down in the trace section menu, so they will be traced, and then we run the simulation. And now it's very zoomed out. So here is the little dot here is Earth, and there we have the Sun. And here we see Jupiter and Saturn doing retrogrades because they are attached to the Sun. They are following the Sun while the Sun is orbiting to Earth. It's so simple, it's so elegant, and it explains retrogrades.
Oh, Patrick, I love this. This is just beautiful.
Yeah. So there we have it.
And this explains
Mystery retrogrades.
That's that's answered Kesenya's question, actually, because why do Jupiter and Saturn do it every year? Because they are circumbinary objects. They call that in astronomy. They are revolving around the whole binary system. The binary system we have is composed by our inner system, which is called the inner system officially, which is then the Sun, Mars, Mercury and Venus, and the Earth. So there are two separate entities, really, the central binary system, and then we have from Jupiter on, they all do retrogrades every year. Yeah. They actually retrograde for quite a long time, every year, like 120 days. They retrograde for 120 days, Saturn and Jupiter, kind of.
And why would Mars be so? These circumbinary, I understand why they do it once a year, because they're tied to the Sun. The Sun's doing its loop. Mars does a retrograde less than once a year because.
No, more than once a year. Yeah,
it
takes like 18 months or something.
Yeah, so
700 days.
so it's the least retrograde of all the planets.
Retrogrades the least.
Why? Because it's part of the binary. So you're explaining, Simon, that the circumbinary, those planets outside the binary pair, are all going to retrograde once a year. The moons of Mercury and Venus, they're going to
the moons of the Sun.
The moons of the Sun, they're going to retrograde more often than Mars. Why is Mars the least common retrograde?
Because it's the companion of the Sun, so it's So it always only every 2 years, or every 2 years approximately. A bit longer, 2.1 years.
It's just because of the geometry, I guess.
Well, the reason why it's not exactly 2, it's because the eccentricity of Mars, it's off center. So for a long while, for a long period of time, it will be a bit more than 2, or maybe be even a bit less than 2. So, but over a very long period, which I explain in the book, I call it a great year. That's 25,344 years. In twice 25,344 years, Mars will complete its own great year. So, which again shows that it's a 2-to-1 relationship between Mars and the Sun. So Mars has a great year, which is double the length of the Sun, and it all makes very much sense.
Double precessional great year. Wow, that is so amazing. And you had up there, you didn't talk to it because we got onto a different point, but you had a diagram of the Mars retrogrades and the alignments with Deneb Alghetti to show why that short ESI occurs. I don't know if you wanted to just mention that briefly before we get too far.
Yes, I forgot to explain this one.
Yeah, that's a beautiful diagram. And to me,
this one,
again, this shows if the retrogrades are quote unquote real, as in those planets are really getting tugged around by the Sun, then that one odd short ESI is explainable.
Yes.
And to me,
we really needed to go through this after having talked so much about retrograde. This is the reason why the short ESI occurs. The short ESI is that 546-day period, right? Well, this is where it occurs because since what Mars is doing is a spirograph, right? And so each time it returns to the same star in 707 days, that's when it does do a retrograde. But when it does not do a retrograde, because when it exits a retrograde here on day 0, in this case, it has just finished a retrograde, then it will only take 546 days to come back on the same line of sight to the star.
Before it
because
gets
it skips one retrograde. And that's why we get these very odd shorter periods. It's 1 out of 8 times. Every 8 times, 1 out of 8 Mars revolutions, it will come back in only 546 days. And it's explained graphically here. It's in front of your eyes.
Yeah.
It proves that the retrogrades are quote unquote real, not illusory. Like we're told it's just an illusion, it's just an optical illusion. Like you think the car on the freeway is going backwards, but really you're both going forwards.
And for an astrologer, the fact that it's just an illusion then should not affect the energy. You know, we're working with energy in astrology. But if this is real and the actual direction of the planet changes, then it makes retrogrades in astrology and their effects make so much more sense and just so much more, tangible in that sense.
Because now Mars is coming right towards us like a freight train. It's like most of the time it's a freight train going past us, but every retrograde, the freight train suddenly turns towards our car and comes steaming towards us for a minute, and then it turns around, and we get that energy of, wait a minute, the freight train just pointed towards me for a minute. I don't know.
Yeah, I was actually in the States in 2018 when a very close opposition on Mars occurred. And I never saw Mars that big. It was huge.
Beautiful, isn't it, when it's close?
Yes, absolutely. And that's why, because it really comes closer to Earth and then goes far away. Okay.
Because the sun is dragging it around. But if that whole, what you just showed, the long or the normal ESI 707 and then the short 546, it's explicable if Mars is really doing those loops, and every 8th time it lines up before a loop, so therefore it's faster. That just clinches it for me. I don't know. That's just the best.
So now,
Makes
if you
David believe in astrology.
If you don't mind, I just want to show you this. I think this is such a beautiful pattern here we're looking at. This is simply, what are we looking at? We are looking at, I've simply done 4 screenshots from the Tychosium simulator and superimposed them on one screen, right? So they are separated, the 4 shots are separated by 6,336 years. So from here is 0, and here is 6,336, and then another 6,336, and I just superimpose them. What do we see happening? That Mars regularly passes in the middle of our PVP orbit. Mars, when it comes closest to Earth, it comes at 56.6 million kilometers. And my PVP orbit, which I have come up with, I've calculated, is 113.2, exactly twice. So in other words, Mars always visits the middle of our orbit. I only realized that much later, in our research, because I had first determined the diameter of the PVP orbit, this blue orbit, which we do in 25,344 years. But then I realized that Mars always passes when it comes closest. When it does its closest passages to Earth, well, look at how beautiful this is. So in a way, people ask me, what is the middle then of the PVP? Are we rotating around nothing? Well, Mars always passes in this middle for some reason. It's as if Mars pivots around the center of our system. The Martian orbits is kind of pivoting around the center. You see these green dots, where there's nothing here. The green dot is just to show that it's the center, but Mars always passes here, all over the great year. I think this is fascinating because Mars is important here in this model, very important.
Is that 2018? Was 2018 one of those times when it went to that dot?
Yes.
Wow. Yes.
It was like 56.8, or yeah, it was very close, relatively. Yeah. So this is how Mars behaves over a full great year.
Amazing.
Well, it's so amazing because Tycho Brahe or Tycho Brahe had it so close to figured out, but you've added that additional year to the mechanism to
to explain the precession of the equinoxes, why we see the stars moving. That we see the whole firmament ticking to the left. I mean, eastwards every year by 51 arc seconds. Tick, 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 51 arc seconds. That's because we are going around this orbit very slowly. Okay, but I wanted to show you here, since this is about retrograde motions, right? This podcast. Here's how they explain, as we talked about before, why the retrogrades of Mars occur. Because when we should overtake Mars here, in our inside lane, as we go around the sun, as they say, we would, overtake Mars, and that would do this effect. This would do this effect of retrograde. Yes, fine, okay. I used to believe that for many years. I thought it looked plausible, but it is not. It is not plausible. It has to be discarded for all the reasons we saw earlier. Because of this, because Mars retrograde is always different. They're sometimes closer, sometimes further away, and that doesn't add up optically. Simply, the laws of perspective do not allow this to happen. Here again, I actually explained quite in depth in my presentations this retrograde thing. See here, Mars retrograde in 2003, when it was very, very close. Remember I told you in 2003? It was only at 56 million kilometers, and the retrograde was very small. Whereas 8 years later, when Mars retrograded on the other side, it was much larger. The retrograde was wider. although Mars was almost twice as far away. Well, that doesn't work, folks. It does not work. Optically, it's absurd.
If we're on the if this is to be explained by us passing Mars, the retrograde when Mars is farther should not cover a much bigger arc of the sky as well.
No, it should be the opposite way.
Yeah.
Opposite. The opposite.
Because
the
a closer object always displays bigger parallax.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you can go out in your garden, if you have a flagpole in your garden, stand in front of your flagpole, you know, very close to it, and move your head and see how much moves behind it, and then go step backwards and see and move your head again, and you'll see that much less will move in relation to the flagpole. Yeah. The further you're away, the less of the background will seem to move. When you go close to the flagpole, you simulate the overtaking of Earth overtaking Mars. You simulate that with your head. You will see that a huge portion of the background will move when you're close to the flagpole with your eyes. And that is a law of nature, of optics, of perspective. Here we have the retrogrades of Venus and Mercury.
So beautiful.
See, they're beautiful. And mind you, do you know that they are exactly at 1 to 2? I mean, the average days of the average retrogrades of Venus are 45.6 days. They last for 45.6 days, and the retrogrades of Mercury last for half that, 32.8.
Unbelievable.
So, which is 1/16 of a year for Mercury and 1/8 of a year for Venus. It's an incredibly perfect Swiss clockwork. This thing that we live in.
It's like music. You know, they used to talk about the music of the spheres and the harmony of the spheres.
Yes.
And
yes. Well,
all these planets being in a harmonious and
that was Kepler's obsession. That was Kepler's obsession, David. His obsession was not. His obsession was a book called Harmonices Mundi, which he finally released in his later years, and he wanted to get, to show that it was everything is connected, musically in the spheres. But he was frustrated because he didn't quite get there, to the exact. Transposition from one key to the other. So he never actually, I think he was really frustrated because he wasn't able to do that. But now, by the way, I'm in contact for several months with an expert in the musical scales and things. He's in Colombia. He's an American gentleman who has been a recording engineer in New York for many years, working with big music stars, pop stars. But now he's kind of retired in Colombia, and he's fascinated by the tychos, but because he sees that if I do my calculations well, I can show you, he says. It's called Christian Castaño is his name, and he is working now on practically what Kepler was trying to do, and he's confident he will get there, to show that all the harmonies between the sizes of and the periods of the planets are linked in a musical harmony. It's very fascinating. I'm not as versed in those maths like Christian is, so I'm waiting for him to present his case. But I've seen some interesting things already.
But
so anyway,
Simon,
here we have
I was going to say, it's so amazing that you have helped to solve this, what Kepler was not able to solve, because perhaps. So isn't your background, aren't you a professional musician?
Yes.
Simon, you know the scales more than most
I've been
people
doing
know the scales, right?
Yes, I've been doing music for many years, and even some sound engineering. but not at the level that this friend Christian has done. Yeah, I mean, I think you need some, you know, your brain has to be a bit musical to also to be able to use, to have an open mind, you know, and look at things without the constrictions of, you know, having had, you know, a PhD in something. I think people are too much attached to the importance of, you know, having some kind of degree to even talk about astronomy. You know, it's like, why? How do you dare even, you know, do this? But I think it's important to approach things from a new perspective sometimes. You know, not everything has been settled in science.
Absolutely, totally agree.
So here's what I said before earlier on. These are the speeds, the rotational speeds of Venus, Mercury, and the Moon. 136. They are locked in a 136 resonance.
That's amazing
NASA
about
says,
our moon. Wow, I did not know that.
Sorry?
That's just amazing about our moon being a part of that trio.
Yes, our moon. So this is, you know, I'm making my case here that Venus and Mercury are moons. And, you know, our moon is also exceptional. It's huge. It is, you know, it's more than 27% the size of Earth. There's no moon we know of that's that big. So why don't we talk about these things sometimes? We never talk about this, but you realize there's no moon as big in proportion to its host than our moon. All the moons of Jupiter are tiny in comparison to Jupiter, and the same for the moons of Saturn, etc. And even the moons of Mars are very small. We have the biggest known moon in the universe. We, the Earth. So the Earth is also a special place, because, you know, they've tried to say that no, we're just a pale blue dot. We're just nothing. You know, this is what we've heard in our lives, right? It's the Earth is just a small little blip in the sky, and no, we have a very special. We live in a very special place. And another thing with the moon is it revolves around Earth and rotates around its axis in 27.3 days, in synchrony with the sun's actual rotation. Yes, folks, the sun rotates around its own axis in the same time that the moon does, and the moon revolves around the Earth. Because, of course, since the moon is tidally locked, it will rotate around itself in 27.3 days and revolve around us in 27.3 days, which is the Carrington number. The sun is, it's been calculated many years ago that the average rotation of the sun is 27.3 days. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Some people tell you, no, it's 25 days, it's 30 days, because they have variable speeds. The sun rotates in variable speeds. Carrington was the expert of the sun, and he determined it was 27.3. So isn't that also very strange? Why would our moon, if we were just one little, you know, the moon was a small appendage of Earth, one of many moons in the, why would the moon have such incredible sympathy with the sun? Well, in the tyos, it makes more sense, because the moon is in the middle here. It's in the middle. We are in the middle of the system, and so is the moon. The Earth-Moon system is in the middle.
I guess that's very important to explain, and something that we haven't talked about yet is the fact that the Earth is in the barycenter, isn't it, of this whole system?
You could say it's barycenter. I was hesitant of calling it barycenter, because, as you saw before, it's Mars that actually visits the barycenter of the system.
We're going around the barycenter.
So we have to, you know, be careful using these words, because we have to revisit and revise everything we know about the system now, and how barycenter works, how gravity works, of course. I mean, I'm not rejecting gravity. People are so they get hung up on the fact that, oh, well, so how do you explain gravity then? Are you a Newton denier? Well, I don't, not necessarily. You see, we just have to first determine the geometry before we can determine the physics of any system, right? You can't put, as I always say, you can't put the cart in front of the horse. You need to first determine the empirical motions of the planets before you can make any supposition of how it works physically. You first need to get your, the observational tables to match with observation. Simply. And that's what the tychus does. So we have to start anew and look at our system. And here's what I briefly mentioned before. Our moon matters. It's a bit of a joke here, Black Lives Matter. Our moon matters. Why does it matter? Because the actual, what I call the TMSP, it's a true mean synodic period of the moon is 29.22 days. That's the Maya knew it was. They used this number. The Maya astronomers used this number. 29.22 is a true average synodic period of the moon. Okay, synodic period means when the moon returns facing the sun. Okay. Well, what I found out that now we have this motion of slow motion of the Earth. I could do this calculation here. If you multiply this 29.22, like factor 1, by 4, you get Mercury's period, 116.88 days. That's every time Mercury returns facing the sun, it takes 116.88, as seen from Earth. Then you multiply it by 20 and you get Venus. And then by 25, you get Mars. And then you get by 150 Jupiter. Whole numbers, whole integer multiples. 375 Saturn, and all the way to Pluto. 1050. The only exception is Neptune, which 2062.5. All right.
The weird planet Neptune.
Neptune is weird. And Pluto is 3,100. I mean, come on, look at this. Look at this. The moon is kind of the central drive shaft of the whole bloody system.
That's amazing. And Simon, just to explain so that I understand, so I can repeat what you're showing us. The synodic periods are when those planets align with the sun from our perspective, and
yes, synodic.
Multiples are.
Yes, I mean there are two words, synodic and sidereal, that you need to really understand. Synodic period is a period of an object to return in front of the sun. Whereas a sidereal period is the period of an object to return in front of the same star. So it's okay. Sidereal is star-wise, and synodic is sun-wise. So yeah, of course we are most interested in synodic periods in our system because we have the sun going around us.
Right. And what was that 27 that was on the previous slide? Because the previous slide had all these 27s with the moon. 27. That's its axial rotation, not its synodic period. Okay.
Oh, but the 27% has nothing to do with this is the 27.3 is that it is the same time that the sun rotates around its axis that the moon rotates around us, revolves around us. All right. Okay. Okay. I mean, look just as this. If we were going around the sun, this is just this is a fantasy heliocentric model, right? With the moon and Earth going around the sun, right? Well, since we can see, we were talking now about the sidereal period of the moon, which means when the moon returns in front of the same star, okay? That's 27.3 days. Okay, well, how can this be true? Because if we are going around the moon and Earth system, go around, every 27.3 days, we always have the moon facing the same star here, all of these from this one to this, the moon is always pointing to the same star. And there are 300 million kilometers between this point and this other point here. But the moon will always be right, straight pointing to the same star. I mean, that's a fact. That's a fact. Again, they will tell you, oh, that's because the stars are so far away. You don't imagine how far away they are, Simon. That's what they say. But that's not a good explanation. The stars are far, far closer, just as Tycho Brahe rightly thought they were. And that's another part of my book. They're about 42,000 times closer. I don't think we have a time to look at this now, but also the moon there are some other things I discovered with the moon which are beautiful. It's such a harmonious thing, really.
I have so many questions I want to ask you, and I'm just conscious of take up a lot of time. But one thing that's just popping into my mind, what do you think of the Antikythera mechanism?
Oh, and in chapter 16 of the book, I briefly look at the Antikythera. And of course, that's very interesting because the Antikythera's biggest mystery, the people who study the Antikythera, their biggest mystery is that, there are so many gears or cogs missing. How could this prophecy have worked? Because they have now discovered that it shows a lunar year cycle, not a solar year. They have discovered this recently. But so if it was a machine based on the moon, well, you only needed very few gears, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gears, probably. Very much fewer gears than they have found that there have been they think they have disappeared in the water, because the Antikythera was a machine they found in the bottom of the sea in around Greece, and they're saying, we can't find the other cogs, but maybe they weren't needed because they knew that there was a much simpler
when it was found, they were all sort of melded together, weren't they? And
they were melded together, but
yes,
but they've been analyzing it with lasers and stuff, and they've been finding out many things, but they still are baffled as to how they managed also to have pointers with the planets included, all the planets. So yeah, you can read about that there are some fascinating articles to read about the Antikythera and the studies that have been doing about it, and they are all it's a huge controversy between Australians and Englishmen, because an English team has been spending millions studying this, but then an Australian guy came up and said, hey guys, this is a lunar calendar, it's not a solar one. and he got his paper published in the Horological Institute of London, and now he has shown that the frontispiece, the frontal big cog, or the main cog, actually has 354 holes in it, and not 365 as was previously believed. He has shown that, and I back him up in chapter 16. I show that he is right. He's an Australian guy.
Of course.
And of course. So yeah, Antikythera is a fascinating machine. They probably
it is,
something we didn't know.
Yeah, and I would just like to add, when they examined this machine, they X-rayed it. And I mean, it was a lump of metal,
Here we go.
Brass and copper.
Can you see it?
Okay.
Can you see my screen?
Wait.
We're seeing your screen, but it's got the
lunatic absurdity, which is a great
It's not
title.
showing Antikythera.
Oh, okay. So hold on. I have to change.
So as I was saying,
here
they X-rayed it,
now,
and it was a piece of metal just fused together. So I find it very unlikely, that anything would be missing. Any cogs would be. Yeah. So, but the problem they have, if they try to replicate this mechanism using heliocentric mechanics, so to speak, they can't make it work. But if you use kind of lunar mechanics instead, if you have the moon as the main shaft and the cogs are then it works. So and that's I mean and the tyos model confirms this. If the moons, the other planets' orbital periods are just factors of the moon. So yeah,
that is
so
amazing.
here's my little contribution to this Australian guy's study. I actually just cut very, very carefully this fragment C, which is the biggest fragment. I cut it in a 1, 2, 3. I got one piece which contained 59 holes, and put them together in 6 bits. I just copied, and it makes a perfect circle, but with 354 holes, as opposed to the 365 holes that the original scientists were assuming. So yeah, the Antikythera was a lunar. It was based on a lunar calendar.
So interesting.
And what's interesting, the goddess Venus was associated with the island of Kythera. She was called Kytheros, and Antikythera was a little tiny island opposite Kythera.
Yes,
so
yes,
it's interesting that, I mean, that's just where the shipwreck happened.
Yes.
But earlier when you were talking about Mars being a red dwarf and it appears red in the sky, reddish, the name Antares, the star Antares, which is reddish, means the rival to Mars. So it's just interesting.
Yes.
Now we're talking Antikythera.
Yeah,
Love it.
But Venus and being the moon and Venus being, encoded in that mechanism is interesting. Although where it sank is not really part of its design.
No, of course.
But that's what
this graphic. You see my graphic here, 16 solar years.
Yes.
This is basically what you would have to imagine, like if a watchmaker, a clockmaker would take on himself to construct Antikythera. He would just have to deal with these proportions, Mars 8, Moon 200, Mercury 50, Venus 10, Sun 16. The mechanism would have been quite simple to do with very few cogs, intermediary cogs to make them work. That's what I was trying to say to say before.
Yeah, it's just like the tychosium. That's actually also a pretty simple mechanism, I would say.
Yes.
It's circles. It's objects moving in uniform motion in circles. So yeah.
Yes, we haven't said that, Patrick, yet. That just to make our listeners understand that what is special with the tychosium and why is Patrick saying it's simpler? It is much simpler than making a heliocentric simulator, because we didn't need to insert any variable speeds. They're saying that all the planets accelerate and accelerate. They speed up and slow down all the time. And they're saying they are doing slightly elliptical orbits. We didn't need that. They are moving in circles and at same speeds, all the bodies in our system. And despite that, they work perfectly well with the ephemerids. They match out. They check out with all the tables we have.
Well, I'm just curious about this speed thing that you've mentioned, because when we've got the retrograde, for example, of Mars appears to sort of slow down and then come back around and swing. There's this, what's the word for it? Like slingshot effect. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So Mars, in a sense, does slow its speed down when it comes to the retrograde and then carries on again. Or it appears, I don't know, am I incorrect in saying that?
No, you're not. From our perspective, but the retrogrades could be described as an effect combined. It's a combination of the sun's movement around the Earth and Mars and the other planets' movement around the sun. So those motions combined result in a physical retrograde.
Yes.
Because they are actually in absolute space, they are
Happening.
moving backwards and forwards. Yes, they are.
So it's
but
going
it's,
around it's going around the sun at the same speed, but as the sun goes around, and the actual motion that it traces in the sky as it's being dragged by the sun,
Yeah.
will the actual trace in the sky, if you attach the smoke,
Mm.
Can we put the tychosium
yeah,
up again to show?
it will actually.
Yeah, sure.
I know what, I think I know what Kesenya means. I'm sure you, I'm sorry, I think Kesenya, I know what you mean. I've been testing this for myself because I think you had a question in some earlier time. It's true. It's if you look at the tracing on the tychosium of the Mars, or Mars going into retrograde, and go around and retrograde and go around, it is an optical. It looks like it slows down as it goes backwards. It's an optical effect. It's one of these, but it still goes at the same speed. But I understand. You have to try it for yourself. It's one of these optical effects that you can find sometimes. They have memes on Facebook. They show you, look, it looks like this, and if you move your head to the right, it's just an illusion, really, that it looks like Mars is altering its speed, but it's not. In the tychosium, it goes at the same speed. But it's a funny thing. I understand what you say. I think that's what you mean.
Yes, that's exactly what I mean.
It's just still going the same speed on this red line, but the fat red line that it's tracing out, because it's hugged by the sun.
Oh, sorry. I have to interrupt my sharing. Right.
No, we've got it.
You got it.
We're seeing it on our screen, so it should be recording.
Yes.
For your viewers.
Okay,
and when it makes those turns, it really does, quote, slow down of the space that it's covering.
Yes.
Although it's still proceeding at the same speed on its little red circle around the Earth.
But you have to go considerably faster, Patrick. Considerably fast, and let's look at only Mars and from above, not from sideways like this. Just from above. Make it as if you were on Polaris. Yeah, but much faster. Like, does it go? Oh, it kind of jumps. Yeah, right. No, we can't see it here. I mean, for me it jumps forward. Does it go smoothly for you?
It's jumping.
Yeah, it's jumping. So maybe
so then you can't see what we're talking about. It's useless. We can't see what we're talking about. You need to see it at home. Use your tychosium, and you will see what I mean. What Kesenya means. It's an effect. It looks like it slows down when it goes backwards for some reason.
But I think this gets to the heart of the retrograde. I mean, the retrograde is kind of the linchpin that we're talking about in this conversation, and the retrograde actually happens in space. Even though Mars is making a circle around the sun, the fact that the sun is making a circle as well drags Mars through space on that actual path. That line that Patrick is tracing is a real path that Mars is really taking, even though it's making a circle. So retrogrades are real. And it actually, it slows down and speeds up as the sun whips it around. Like you said, like that, like if the cowboy had a rock on a string, the rock would always be going at the same speed. But if the rock started smoking, the smoke rings would go fast and slow.
Exactly. The smoke rings analogy is good, I think, for people to get it. If there was a big bonfire on Mars that would leave this red trace, well, that bonfire would leave these loops. The smoke of the fire would leave these loops.
That's really good.
And sometimes faster and sometimes slower. But even though Mars itself on its string is going at the same speed around the sun at all times, and that I mean, to me, the retrogrades is really a strong argument for the tychos. A crucial and
astrology
connects to astrology. I mean, we don't demand that Simon acknowledge astrology, but the fact that you acknowledge astrology and it, like, wow, Mars retrograde. When I hear about Mars retrograde, I happen to be born in a Mars retrograde, I'm like, wow, that's amazing.
Yes, Mars retrograde explains Dave's personality entirely.
Explains some things about myself. Like, wow, it really works. Well, this would explain why it works, because Mars was doing this approach to Earth when I was born.
Yeah, and it's a rare thing. You're a rare personality.
It's the rarest retrograde. Bizarre.
Well, I'm not sure if there's anything like, do you want to share to wrap up our conversation further, Patrick or Simon? No?
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, this has been so fascinating years, I would say, to discover this system and Simon's model together with him. And I hope more people will be able to consider this and to ask this question, because it's a very hard question to ask. But what I could say is that we've been here historically as well, and that will cause some kind of and that resulted in a reformation or an enlightenment. Yeah. So I mean, back in the 16th and 17th century, there was the same thing, you know. I mean, then it was the geocentric model that ruled, you know, the Aristotelian or Ptolemaic model. And the great upsetter, actually, against that model, that wasn't Copernicus, that was Tycho Brahe. Because when he published his first works, I think it was called Stella Nova, he challenged the crystalline spheres. That was one of the basic tenets in the Aristotelian model, that, you know, the planets and the celestial bodies were attached to transparent spheres in the sky. But through Tycho Brahe's work, he could show that these spheres cannot exist. I mean, he did, for example, geometrical measurements on a comet, and demonstrated that this comet were flying through these spheres, so they couldn't be there. Yeah. So and that started a reformation in astronomy and also within society. And I would say that this work and this way of showing that no, the heliocentric model isn't the perfect and the final model of our solar system. It actually has serious problems. And I hope and think this will lead to development and growth of science and our understanding of the world and reality and astrology as well, you know. So yeah, that's my hope, and thank you so much for having us, Kesenya. It's been a great conversation, and it's so joyful to explain these things. Yeah.
It is. And I think, you know, many of my audience and astrologers in general have had to have an open mind to things, to, in our Western society, even entertain astrology and come to astrology, because it's quite poo-pooed by the mainstream. So having an open mind to understand something new, something different, something that's not the run-of-the-mill model, I feel like it's a very valuable attribute to have, to explore, to be curious, to want to know more about the world and the system that we live in. And this is just a massive big part of that. So thank you for sharing. It's been so beautiful.
Yes, Kesenya, I must say that, I'm not an astrologer. I know very little about astrology, but I have high hopes that, actually astrologers may be more keen to look at the tyos because they are naturally more open-minded. I think the closest minded people are those who have, academic people who think that Kepler is untouchable, Newton is untouchable, and they have their untouchables, And it's sad it is that way, but it is amazing how they are so invested in these great minds. Of course, they were great minds, but they defined our system like 300-400 years ago, and now we can't even question it.
That's it.
I mean, have we not found anything new? Yes, we have. We have found many new things with very, very, very big telescopes. We have seen that most stars are binary. We have seen this and that. We have seen that there are stars that don't shine with their own lights, red dwarfs, brown dwarfs. We've learned many things, and we need to, now look again at what works best. And if I may, if we have time, I would like this this is a little present to Kesenya. I think she'll love it. I would like to shortly talk about Eros, the asteroid Eros.
Yes, please do.
Okay. Eros, the god of love.
Yeah,
she has been in astrology one of the biggest reasons we've had so much upheaval since 2020, because she's been making a square aspect to Pluto and Eros.
You know what?
Oh, Aries.
Eros.
He's saying Eros.
Are you saying Aries?
Eros.
No,
Eros.
E-R-O-S or
He's saying E-R-O-S.
E-R-O-S.
I share my screen and I show you.
No,
okay.
You know what, ladies and gentlemen, I've promised no more than 2 hours here because we are going out swimming, because it's one of the few days in Sweden with the good summer weather. So I will exit, and thank you so much. Thank you so much for having us, Kesenya.
All right.
We'll talk again.
All right,
Patrick. Have a great.
See you later.
Thank you.
See you.
Yeah. See you later. Take care. Have a good day.
Yes.
So right. So it is Eros. Do you see my screen?
Eros. My apologies.
I have to apologize because I thought you were thinking of Eros, but you were thinking of Eris.
Eris.
So,
yeah. IS.
Eris. Right. The small planet. No. This is the first asteroid ever discovered. Near Earth asteroid. It comes very close to Earth. When it comes close to Earth, okay. Oh my God, someone calling me. When it comes closest to Earth, it does extremely small retrograde, as you can see here. And look at the shape of its orbit. It's a heart. Eros makes a heart. Isn't it wonderful?
That's perfect. I love it.
Yes. And why does it make a heart? Well, don't ask me, but I've been thinking about this much more lately. And you see, how did it come out like this in the tychosum? Why does it do this heart? Well, I just inserted the known orbital speed. The unknown orbital speed of Eros, the known perigee when it comes closest, and a few other parameters, but I didn't have to insert its mass. Like, Newtonian people will say, the mass determines how planets move in the sky, and if they come closer, mass is so important for them. But wait a minute. If I just inserted data which had to do with its periods. It takes 81.1 years for it to return closest to Earth. I inserted, therefore, its speed, and I got this heart-shaped thing. If I go into the tychosum now and just change the speed a little, it would not do this anymore. It will do another thing, another shape. So wait, but is this what we see actually Eros doing? Yes, this is from Wikipedia. This was when it came close in 2012. It came that close, and it did this very, very short retrograde. This is the center of the heart, Is it? What do you call this in English? This part of the heart.
The center of the heart.
Yeah, the V, you know, the V shape. It's like a V almost.
But I love this, as above, so below. Like, that's exactly what this is. It's beautiful.
But do you understand the importance of this? Because this is what we actually see it doing when it comes closest to Earth, okay? It does this very strange V-shaped thing and then goes up again. And you know, it does this hard turn here. And when we look at the Tychosium, that's exactly what it does, right? So what does this mean in terms of Newtonian gravity? Well, it means that it doesn't, the Newtonian gravity has no bearing on this. I didn't insert any parameter of its mass. It might just as well have been a planet, even Jupiter-sized, you know, who would do this if it went at the same speed and had the same orbital parameters as Eros.
So it's going around the sun, Simon. It's going. Eros is going around the sun, and it's getting tugged by the sun's motion, just like all the other planets. But it's inside the.
See here on this comparison. This is a NASA simulator, and this is a Tychosium. I mean, look how similar they are. It's just that the Earth is here now.
Yeah.
But you see, the relative positions of all the planets are exactly the same. This is to make you understand why this works so well. Because, you know, we're not that far. We're not saying completely different things than the official. Of course not. We have to have the planets in the places where they are observed, and this is why. You understand here the difference between the two models?
Yeah.
So Eros, on this date, 2012, 31st of January, it was here, and Earth was here. And the same happens in the Tychosium, right? Only that the actual shape of Eros is this. And
the Tychosium is the geoheliocentric model is the only one that can explain the retrograde of Eros.
It can, the only one that can explain this very strange retrograde. Yes, absolutely. This is not explainable at all. Why would it do this?
Yeah.
No, it's not explained. You know, it's funny.
The powerful argument.
Sometimes I use Wikipedia, you know, to just shake some, you know, mainstream ideas of what they think.
If you go back to that,
so I go to the Italian Wikipedia because I speak Italian too, and they will say Eros never retrogrades. That's not true. That's not true. They, you know, and then I go to the English Wikipedia and says, yeah, it retrogrades very, very, very little sometimes, and erratically or stuff like that. So there is not really no consensus in astronomy circles as to why Eros does this, for instance. And again, this is also another, you know, the parallax thing, you know, but Eros disproves the heliocentric theory for retrograde motion. Also, Eros disproves it also because it comes much closer than Venus. So since it comes closer than Venus, it should do a much larger retrograde against the stars. But it does not. It does a very small one. Okay, there's this. That's what it does here. So you see, even gravity, Newton's gravity here has a problem to explain this, because Eros could have been any size, but due to its observed speed and orbital parameters, it will do this heart-shaped thing.
I love it.
And completely disregarding, you know, any notions of gravity or mass, gravitational effects. That's why I'm now a little bit more, a bit less hesitant to say that Newton got it wrong. I was careful to say it before, but I think Newton really got it wrong as to the importance of masses in the cosmos.
Yeah.
They had probably Yeah.
Simon, we're in a position where we have to go as well
Yeah.
now. We have
Yes,
to
yes,
collect
sure.
my
Great.
daughter from work.
That was a great place
Yes.
that was a great place to finish up. And, you
All
know,
right.
there's so many other things like, you know, I can see right there that Comet Halley or Halley's Comet, it, you know, it's retrograding too. And you've proven that it's just
Incredible.
it's incredible. The data is out there for people to check out, and they really
Yes,
should
yes.
with an open
And
mind.
Halley's is another story. Halley's comets, yeah.
Mm.
Supposedly goes around us in a cigar-shaped orbit. You know, another absolute absurdity. Why would Halley's, with the same size as Eros, practically the same size, do this, whereas Eros does a ring? and comets do cigar-shaped orbits. Well, I explained that in chapter 30 of the book.
Everybody
So it's
get a
been,
copy of the book.
Oh yes,
Find out
yes,
all
yes.
these amazing
It's
details.
I've been told it's like reading it's like reading a thriller. Someone has told me. It's not boring. It's not a boring book. You know, astronomy usually is, you know, it's a boring subject matter, but I've tried to
No.
make it interesting.
No, it's never boring. I love it. And especially in the case of, you know, astrology and astronomy coming together, it actually makes it personally applicable because of the old Hermetic principle, as above, so below. And it makes it very powerful to understand the astronomy. All astrologers should understand the astronomy if they want to really get their teeth into why they're sharing what they share or learning what they learn regarding astrology.
Oh yeah.
So thank you so much once again for your time and for sharing this amazing presentation. It's so
Congratulations
impressive.
on
All right.
the book and what you've discovered, Simon. It's a pleasure to have you explain it to us, and we'll talk again.
Maybe when Mars goes retrograde, we'll have you back again. And we
Next
can
time it goes backwards.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, it's been fantastic. Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much. You're so nice.
And thank you everybody for joining us.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.